Well, welcome to the latest in the Deckhive Introduces webinar series. And it's fantastic today to be joined by two people, not just one. So we have Susannah Childers and we have Lynette McCormack, and both are here to talk about the Pathways deck, which we're really pleased to have available in our Deckhive library for anyone who wants to use the digital version when they're working one-to-one or with groups online, or even in face-to-face scenarios where you want to use technology to do that. So welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for giving up the time. So you guys are over in the US, aren't you? So it's morning for you, even though it's late in the day for me in the UK. So yeah, thank you for giving the time up to be here. So it'd be good to kind of get to know a bit about each of you and kind of what your backgrounds are and how you came to be here in the world of card decks. So, Susannah, do you want to kick us off in terms of what you guys do and what the background is?
Sure. Well, Lynette and I are co-founders of a company called AHA. We are a facilitation company. We really focus on facilitating groups of people to collaborate better, to gain insight into their business and their customers, and to drive innovation for their companies. So it's really about helping teams of people come together. Our tagline is connect, create, and transform. So we're really all about connecting people with each other to create whatever their future is, and then transform their business, their outcomes, their insights into that. So we're really around improving collaboration and facilitating that. So we see ourselves as facilitators, making groups work easier in doing that. Lynette, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, so I retired from AHA a couple of years ago, and so I have reinvented myself, I guess, or kind of a continuum of what I was doing. I'm an intuitive artist, and I'm a facilitator of transformation. And what that means is I help people focus on their creative vision for their life. I help people explore themselves in a deeper way through art making. And I also help creatives who are running their own workshops to transform them through facilitator training. So that's what I've been busy doing.
Excellent. And yeah, it's really nice to kind of see the collaboration of art coming together and creative backgrounds with kind of lots of different environments and sort of, I guess, often business environments. So what kind of clients do you tend to work with? Are they kind of varied?
For our business clients tend to be corporate. So when we work with large corporations, Fortune 100s, and down to small companies. I've got a strategic planning session next week with the small company with 4 people on the leadership team. So, it ranges from big, small, nonprofit and for-profit types of organizations, as well as with individuals. So coaching, but it's really all about helping people to, gain insight and move forward with whatever it is that they're trying to create.
So I can see how the deck of cards kind of fits with that. So how did it come to be? How did that journey start?
Yeah, so, oh my gosh, I have always loved decks. I have probably around 60 decks that I have in my curated collection right now.
Wow.
I've gotten rid of some. And early in our work as AHA, when we first founded AHA, we were using a lot of images, mostly magazine pictures, things like that, to help people tell stories about their experiences with products and services, so that designers could create better products and experiences for them. And so our clients would hire us to help them listen better to what their customers and consumers needed and wanted. And I remember it was in the early 90s. I was actually in Poland doing some research, and it was one of the first times that I had had the opportunity to use pictures. And I was sitting in the workshop setting, and I noticed that I had tears running down my face. And part of that was because the pictures, they were just magazine pictures from that I had picked up in Warsaw, and people had picked pictures and started telling their stories, and they were so beautiful and deep, and the metaphors that were being elicited by using the images were just so powerful that grabbed hold of me, and it has stuck ever since. So early on with our clients, we were also using magazine pictures. And then just for portability purposes, I started printing photographs that I had taken on like 4x6, just 4x6 photographs, and using them kind of postcard size for team startup, warm up, check-ins, pulse checks, things like that. They seemed to be a really good size. And it occurred to me that it was a deck. It was really, it was a deck. It was a deck that just had been created. And so fast forward to 2010, we had been doing training for facilitators for a while at AHA. And one of our founding philosophies is that we always want to teach the way that we do things. We do things really differently. Like we have kind of a non-traditional approach to most of the work that we do. And so we really wanted to always train people to do what we do and how we do it, that there's no black box. There's a lot of magic, but there's no black box. And so I started creating decks that we could share, sell with other with our clients and also with people that we were training to be facilitators. And that's where it started. And our very first deck was called Let the Picture Pick You, because we really believe that the images pick the picker rather than, you know, so there's kind of this match between conscious and unconscious realm. So the deck that we have on Deckhive is the Pathway deck. I think Susannah was like waving it around there for a minute. And that came out in 2015 was the first time we issued that deck.
Great. So has every deck you've created been visual in that sense?
Every deck that I've created has been visual, except I have a couple of leadership question decks, a values deck, and a living what's next deck. And those have some visual elements, but they are also really the structure is more words than relying on the images.
But there's something special about the picture decks then, by the sound of it, and using that kind of visual metaphor to get people to tell the stories.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it really helps people say what is in their heart or in their being that they might not even know that they have to say. So it really does bring out so much more. I love it. I love using pictures.
And do you remember why you first thought about using pictures in magazines? Had you seen someone else do that before? Or
yeah, I was working with a team member. One of my mentors just said, let's try this. You know, he had done something like it, I think back in the 80s. And he said, you know, I haven't done this for a while. Let's try it. And he was kind of like, yeah, it's no big deal. You know, it's kind of a great way to warm the group up. And like I said, I had tears running down my face. So there was just something much deeper that I connected with, that I felt was connecting with the people that were using the pictures. And I think the other thing is, it's a great, for a team, it's a great, I'm not sure this is the right word that I want to use, but I'm going to use it, leveler. Meaning that if we do a team startup, for example, and we ask people to pick a picture for what they expect or what they anticipate the best and brightest future would be of their team, or the outcome of the work that they're doing together in that period of time, no matter what the level is or where that person is from the organization, where in the organization they're from, they're all doing the same activity and they're all sharing something. They're going into this kind of unknown space and you know, being maybe a little vulnerable, not in a way that's scary, but in a way that is allows them to reveal as much as they would choose to reveal. And so I think that's very powerful too, is it's a great invitation to be human and to be, you know, truly share from your heart.
Yeah, I think they're good words. And I've seen that happen many times with visual imagery, that kind of somehow just gets past that rational part of your brain, doesn't it, and gets you into something else.
Absolutely.
So I can see how that fits with the work that you do. So let me share my screen so we can have a look at some of the cards in Deckhive then, so you can give us a flavor about the kinds of content. So so it's called Pathways for a reason, I guess. They're
all pathways. Yeah, one of the reasons that we got to the Pathways deck and decided to share it with Deckhive is that in our earlier decks, the Let the Picture Pick You decks, which were lots of different images. We noticed that pathways were chosen, and the way people talked about pathways, particularly in team settings or when people were working forward or going towards something in terms of the visioning for themselves or their projects, pathways were often pictures that they chose. And all of our decks that we've created really do not have people in them. They are from, these pictures are from around the world. I think I counted that there are like 10 or 12 countries that these pictures have come from. And you can see that the structure is just pictures. And so in the first column, we have kind of a nature and cityscape. We also have cards that are stairs. We have lots of stair cards going up and going down. We have cards that are inside. We have cards that are outside. We have cards that have kind of a meandering open horizon. And then we have cards that are more constrained, more focused. We have straight paths, we have curvy paths, we have obscured paths, and we have paths that you can see from quite a distance. So yeah, so it's kind of a range. There are probably some other descriptor words as well for the paths.
Yeah, so did you set out with a kind of vision about the kinds of paths you wanted to put into the deck, or did you gather the photographs and then later kind of see that there was a pattern and structure to them?
Gosh, I don't know. I think I was just exploring pathways and then realized that there were so many different ones that I had captured, kind of what attracted my attention, the photographs that I have. And since this deck has been issued in 2015, there's certainly a lot more pathways that I've seen. There are others that could be added that would be interesting.
Yeah, I guess you must be really primed now to see these kind of pathways and everywhere you go to take some more pictures. So give us a flavor then about how they would be used and what your intentions were about how they might be used. So Susannah, do you want to give us a flavor of how you've seen them come to life?
Yeah, we use them, as Lynette's talked about, we use them with teams of people frequently, as well as with individuals and in larger group settings. One of the favorite places that I use these pretty early on, when we'd only had them a year or so, was at a large conference. I was actually in South Africa at a creativity conference that we did at the Henley Business School. And it was a full day, actually it might have been a 2-day workshop over a weekend. And on the end of the second day, we were bringing people together to kind of do that end of conference integration. And I had a couple of these decks with me, and I spread them out literally on the floor. So I had the hard copy decks at that point. Deckhive wasn't around to help us with that yet. But we spread them out in a big path on the floor and invited all of the participants to go and choose one. And I did have them face down because we do really like the intuitive pull and to see what message you get from the card and what that inspires. And this was a super powerful way to end this conference. And everyone went and chose their card, and then they got with the partner. So they were sitting with the partner and had some conversation about where would they see themselves going next on this creative journey that they were on. So they came to this conference to enhance their creativity and their ability to innovate. And the energy in the room was just amazing in terms of the conversations and where people were going. And then people shared out at the end, and they held up their card and said, oh, I see this, and there's some walls here, but I know that there's a light down there further, and that's what I'm aiming towards, or it's a tough climb that I've got ahead. So there was just a really interesting, powerful way to end the conference. And then we invited them in that case to take the card with them, because it was a physical reminder of where they were in their journey. So that was one super fun way to use them. We also use them frequently with teams. I just used them recently with a team starting a project, as Lynette mentioned, a kickoff. And actually we have an example of that, I think, on table 1, if you want to shift the share there, Martin. We invited people to pick an image. And in this case, we did let them look at the pictures. They chose an image about what their current experience was of the team's progress. And they all went to the deck on the left. I don't know if you want to do a little illustration of how Deckhive works if people are new to the platform. but they could scroll down the images to the left and grab one of those. You can just do that by clicking right on it and popping it out onto the screen as Martin's adding to our collage there. So the team members each did that. And we asked them to add a title to it. That's one of the things that in facilitating a group, we really find is important, both to have the instructions on the page with the group. So the little blue sticky there that says choose one image. When you get a group of 8 or 10 people, either as the facilitator, you're going to repeat that instruction 8 or 10 times, or you can have it right there on the board. And that's one of the great things about the visual whiteboard interface with Deckhive is it allows us to post those instructions right there. And we have a little sticky note there for them to add a title. So they drop their picture out from the list on the side, and then they add their title right there. Yeah, so Martin's adding his little title right there and connecting that with the picture. So he's got trees out there out in the distance on the horizon. What we did then is let each person share where they are on the progress, and then we captured over on the right-hand side, you'll see the different themes. So in this case, some of the things that we learned was they maybe were all in a little bit different places, but they do see a road ahead. They're really positive in terms of the changes. They see what's possible. So they all are moving towards improvement, those kinds of things. And it allowed the conversation to start out going, as Lynette said, a little bit deeper, being a little bit more vulnerable. And even the people who picked, I think we had in this case, that really foggy picture, that one gets picked pretty frequently. Lynette and I were together when she took that picture. So we both remember that story really clearly. An interesting thing when you've seen the pictures in real life as well. But you know, that person really didn't know where they were going ahead, but yet they can still pick a picture and allows them to share, you know what, I'm not really sure where we're going on this. And that enables further conversation. So it builds trust with the team and allows them to go a little bit deeper. So that's a great team kind of kickoff or startup or even check-in. In fact, I'll probably use this version with the team again as we're moving forward, because they've got some other little bumps in their road, metaphorically here, that we've uncovered through the process. So they may not be on that straight and narrow path. And so we need to take a look at that and say, what's coming up on the journey, on the road? So using those metaphors helps people to expand the possibilities of how they think about their work.
Great. So how long would you allow for an activity like that then?
Well, you know, largely in this case depends on how big your team is, but with 8 or 10 people, you know, it just takes them a minute really to grab the picture and drag it on. Usually what I do, just by way of process as the facilitator, is I will pull up and I'll have my instructions preset on the screen, and I will do a screen share and demo the practice for them so that they see. Super easy to learn how to use the Deckhive. They don't need a training on it. It's one of the things that we really appreciate about the interface that you've built. So I just do a screen share, show them how to use it, explain what the instructions are. Then I pop the invite into the chat on the Zoom. We're working on a virtual basis with this team. And they take about a minute. So that maybe takes a minute or two. It takes about another minute for them to pick their pictures. And then we allow them to share their stories and their pictures to get into the conversation. The picking of the pictures and sharing the stories, you know, a minute's a long time for a person to talk. So in total, we may be at only 15 minutes, and we've got a really powerful platform, a grounding for the team to start their work, even with capturing some themes. And then you can start to dive in with further conversation around, all right, what do we think we want to do with these, you know, challenges or opportunities that we might have? So 10 to 15 minutes and you've got a lot going on with the small team. If we had an even larger team, we might send them into breakout groups of 2s or 3s to talk about it, and then come back and share some themes and patterns and what they saw. So if you've got 20 or 30 people, you can still use the platform really well. You just break out the conversation, because no one wants to sit and listen to 30 people necessarily give their long story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you can use the tables feature, can't you, in Deckhive?
Yes.
So you have these different tables with different numbers at the bottom. And that can allow people to have their own space to work in with their breakout rooms, so they're not getting on top of each other and confusing matters. So great that can work. Okay, so that's a really useful example. So I guess you have others that you can talk through about different ways you use the deck.
We do. I think we wanted to talk about the one that's on table 2, where we use this with more of a coaching situation. And Lynette, you want to share that one?
Sure. So this is a kind of a one-on-one conversation with an individual trying to figure out, they're in transition, trying to figure out what to do next with their career. They've left a career that they were very happy and successful with, and trying to figure out how they're feeling and thinking and where they're going. And so I asked them to pick a past, a current, and a future image for themselves. And then they actually, and again, they looked at the pictures, they picked the pictures, and then I facilitated the conversation. They did give it a title, and then as they were talking, I typed in what they said. So after that conversation, then I asked them to pick one more picture. So they picked those first 3 pictures, and then I asked them to pick one more picture that represented "Now I Will." And so again, they picked a picture, and then I listened them into understanding kind of what they were willing to do next. And what happened was it really shifted from this kind of space of, you know, I'm in this place where I don't know what I'm doing or how I'm going to get there. It looks like it's a lot of effort, and allow them to see that there are some possibilities, that what they really are intending is that there's some open possibilities and that it could be an enjoyable process.
But I've found that kind of the nature of the pictures just creates that sense of direction and energy almost because of what it is. You can almost feel yourself moving sometimes with some of these images, can't you?
Yeah.
I can see how that comes through.
And it's interesting also, you know, as you're working with people one-on-one, to have them also reflect about the differences between the pictures. So if you notice, the first picture is kind of a very close-in picture, like you're really there, you're like in that moment. The future picture is like they're up in the sky, they're way above what it is that they're, you know, the pathway that they're looking at. And so there's some openings. The middle one is like kind of constrained, you can't see where the end is, it feels kind of, you're in the dark. So that also can lead to some interesting coaching kind of conversations about how that feels and what they might do.
And do you ever feel like these conversations are the same as each other, or are they just completely different every time?
Oh yeah, the people are different. So it, you know, people can pick the same card. This is the interesting thing, is that people can pick the same card and see completely different things in it. And
I actually had a client that did a similar thing, a coaching client I'm working with now, and her middle picture there was that exact same picture. These are completely unrelated examples. She had a different current and different past, but her current was the same. Her thinking about it was, I'm walled in, I'm hemmed in. So what she was focusing on was these sides that were barriers to kind of her being there. And she didn't pick the same third picture. Her third picture was one that was an open and had it had a kind of rocky path. So she didn't really know where it was going. And there, you couldn't see necessarily the end, but it was green and lush. And so that gave her the ability to think through those images in yet a different way.
Yeah, that's really really nice. And how often do you comment about a picture yourself ever in relation to a story? Is it always their story?
It's always their story. It's always their story. And so important in a group setting in particular is to, you know, not go like, oh, this is my favorite picture you picked or anything like that. That it really is, you know, staying kind of in that neutral facilitator place is really important. And when I'm doing coaching, it's the same thing. I might ask a question. I really hope that I'm not asking leading, interviewing kind of questions. I'm really, you know, just asking for more. Tell me a little bit more about that. What, you know, what else are you thinking about? Can you remember another time that was like this? Those kinds of coaching questions that allow the person to explore their own story.
Yeah.
So it's not about what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
And I would add that in a group, what we're really looking is not to drill into any one person, but to look at the overall, what are we seeing in terms of themes and patterns here, similarities and differences across the collage of pictures, for example, that we saw on that table one. You know, so where are we? Are we aligned? Are we seeing the same kinds of things or not?
Yeah, great. So do you ever have a situation where someone, either within a group or in a one-to-one scenario, says, I don't get this, I don't relate to it, I can't choose a picture, or I can't find a picture that tells the story I want to tell? And any of those kind of difficult moments happen, or do you find that everybody always finds something to tell a story around?
I would say that in our experience with pictures, both this deck and others, there are certainly people who at first are like, well, I don't know. And it's like there's a cognitive barrier to they have to do our training, that we have to have the right answer. And one of the beautiful things about pictures, and I know that some of your other partners that have decks out here talk about this as well, the pictures kind of allow us to get out of our own way. And so while people may have some hesitation at first, well, I don't know what the right picture, or I don't see the right picture. And we say, well, you know, if you were to pick a picture that speaks to you, sometimes that's why we use, and we'll show you some examples of where we use the pictures flipped over and use a more intuitive pick, so that, you know, you're getting out of that kind of getting out of your own way with the barrier. But I would say I maybe in 25 years of doing this, one time, maybe someone really just refused to pick a picture, but in team settings, generally everybody can find something. It's like, well, if you did know, what might it be? Or if you know, did, and usually then they could pick something and go, oh, well, I see it. And then they start to see, particularly in our group facilitation, where they fit in with everybody else. And then all of a sudden they're not alone. So we also build those connections and bridges between people. They're like, oh, my picture's a lot like this. It has, you know, some similar elements. And then they see where they are as part of it, not a complete outlier, or that they don't know. It gives them confidence as well. So it has a lot of benefits in those ways to get people communicating and collaborating.
Yeah, powerful stuff. Okay, so would you want to talk through one of those other examples then, about how you use them in different ways, maybe the intuitive pull that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, let's go to table 3. Lynette, why don't you share this one?
Yeah, so this, I was sitting with a friend the other day, and she was getting ready for a very busy day. And I said, you know, would you mind pulling some cards and just seeing kind of how you are feeling? And she posed these questions for herself, what I'm paying attention to right now and what I need to pay attention to over the next few weeks, kind of very short term. She's in a big transition, moving houses, like lots of things are up in the air. And so she picked these 2 cards just from the side. They were flipped over. So Martin, if you could flip the deck over and just show what that would look like.
But yeah, so if we open the deck, yeah, we can flip over all the cards on the left-hand side there.
Right.
And, so,
and
yeah,
then
you can scroll through and we've got no idea what any of those cards are.
Right. So you can go ahead and flip both of these cards over. And then she went ahead and reflected on the first card, and she reflected on the second card. So if you can kind of remove the little white page there. And so where she was when on the day that she was picking this, was she was realizing there were a lot of kind of details that she needed to figure out. And she was looking at things from multiple levels. That's what this picture helped her articulate, kind of paying attention to things that kind of from the outside, kind of getting the bigger picture, the perspective of the tasks that needed to be happening. And she was feeling a little overwhelmed. So that's how she was feeling about this picture. Mm-hmm. The second picture, the way she read this was, there is a path. There's an opening at the end. It's green, it's sunshiny. And what she needed to be paying attention to is not getting distracted by all the nooks and crannies along the side. You can see those little pieces, and kind of getting slowed down by being curious about what was there, and realizing that at the end of the month, there might have been some things left behind, left undone, but that was going to be okay because there was sunshine at the end.
It's amazing, isn't it, that someone can set the question and the topic that they want to focus on, and then make sense of a random picture in that context.
Yeah,
and that's really interesting. It's a different way of using kind of pictures than I've ever done before. I think that's really powerful.
The other thing about an intuitive pull is, we really believe that there is kind of a part of yourself that pulls that picture, that, you know, this is kind of in a woo-woo sort of some way that you kind of know, like that unconscious or super conscious way, that picture is the one that you need to be able to help you understand where you are, or something about the question that you're posing yourself. So we really like intuitive pulls.
Yeah, and I can see, you know, whether or not you think that, or the client thinks that way, it doesn't really matter, does it? Because either way, they're making sense of that visual and making sense of their own scenario and situation through that medium, aren't they? So I can see the benefits of that. So and you have another example just below, don't you, about a similar kind of process where you've used the same thing with two people at the same time, is that right?
And again, this was also an intuitive pull, so the cards were turned so they could only see the back. This is a pair that are entering a creative endeavor together, and so looking at kind of their own personal creative processes, and thinking about today, kind of the immediate next steps and what they want their essential experience to be. And what was interesting to them about this was, if you look at the top and the bottom, so the top is one person and the bottom is another person. On the top, the first person is, I'll just call them the first person A, is starting from this very big, broad perspective. And that is how their creative process works. And at the end, they're getting much more into a kind of an implementation or development, kind of making sure that things are taken care of and the details are taken care of. Person B is very interested in looking close in at the details and being curious about what the possibilities are, but much more in a close-in, detailed perspective. And then their endpoint is very open, lots of possibilities, lots of various choices and that sort of thing. What I love about this deck versus using an actual physical deck, unless you had multiple decks that you were using physically, is that these two people picked unknowingly, because the cards were turned over, exactly the same middle in terms of the immediate next steps. And they talked about them a little differently. Person A talked about it in terms of kind of being a gradual pathway that looked easy. Person B looked at it as more of being a little bit of effort to go up that hill. But once they shared about their individual perspectives on the pictures, then I facilitated an insight. So that what were the insights they got when they looked at their pictures together, and what were for both today, immediate next steps, and the essential experience. Them both picking the same picture for the middle actually made them feel like and I think they still feel this way, feel very aligned, and like they're together in this. So it was kind of a little magic check mark for that.
I feel like I should add a point here in that all of the work that Lynette and I have done together, and we've worked together for a long time, like, I don't know, 25, 30 years, 27 years, I think maybe we met. We are visual facilitators, so graphic facilitators. And so one of the principles of that is making thinking visible. And so when we first heard about Deckhive and were invited to participate, it was a great way to share the visuals virtually, but also that in terms of the cards, but the insights and capturing the insights and making those visibles is a great aspect to the Deckhive platform as well. And having the ability to capture that thinking so it doesn't just go off into the air. So now this pair has access to this Deckhive. They've got their ideas captured. They don't just each have to take separate notes. It becomes this collective, kind of like the themes we saw in that broader team. It allows us to have kind of the words and the thinking and the feelings that go behind the pictures captured as well, so that when this pair gets together and works the next time or is moving forward, they can check back in with this and go, okay, how have we moved? How have we progressed? Where are we in terms of moving these insights along in terms of our next step? So it's an important and powerful aspect to it, in addition to the pictures that are in the decks, we feel. So we thank you for having those capabilities in here.
Oh, pleasure. Yes, it's nice to see that they kind of work for you and add something useful. And I think the couple of features that we can use very nicely on the back of that then is to continue that session if you wanted to kind of do that in a dynamic way, because you can obviously reopen a saved session and reactivate it again and invite them back in and continue that discussion, which can be really nice, I think. And I know a lot of people do that. But the other more simple way now, we just added in the last week or so this camera, excuse me, the camera icon. It's typical, isn't it, when I'm trying to speak? frog in my throat, which takes a screenshot. So you can then download that. You can send that to people who are involved, and they can have their own record in a static form of the conversation they had.
Yeah, we love that feature.
Fab. Okay, well, you guys say what you're going to say next, and I'll just take some more drink.
What else do we want to say?
Well, I think the other example that we had was on table 5, was to go over and do we have a topic on this, Lynette? I think maybe it's.
I thought maybe we were going to have Martin pose a topic.
Yeah, what would be something so this is an array of cards and that we put in here, and we don't know what the cards are behind there, and we thought that we could demo it by doing a live intuitive pull and picking a card to flip over. So Martin, is there a topic, a question that you might have for Deckhive?
Well, I think that there's lots of things we've been thinking about recently, and I think part of that is about what's the audience or direction that's most useful. You know, where in what context is Deckhive going to be most valuable to people going forward? Would that be a good kind of question, or are you thinking something more broad? I'm open for you, your guy. You can steer me towards a question you think would be a good example to choose.
No, I think that would work well. So we'd say, kind of in what ways might Deckhive be most useful going forward? What's the that future pathway, that future journey that Deckhive is just at the beginning stages of? So what do we see as the path lying ahead, and what insights might we have around that that the cards can help us to understand?
Okay. So what would you like me to do next then? Do I randomly choose a card, or do I?
Yeah. So go ahead and randomly choose a card and flip it over. Interesting.
Let me just enlarge that one. Okay, so should I just speak about what I see here and how I feel that relates?
Yeah.
I think I'm immediately sort of seeing that there's an unknown destination here. So I'm going up the steps, but what's around the corner when we get to the steps is a bit unknown. So it's a journey of exploration, I think, and I think it's going to be at times kind of the being careful to stay on the steps, because it looks like there's an element of risk there across to the side that we could fall off and end up somewhere else. But I also the other interesting thing by having that tree at the top there, that looks like it's maybe kind of quite an exposed position because that tree is kind of leaning over. So that makes me feel like there's a really good view from the top. And so when we get to the top of the stairs, and that will be a good place to be, because then we'll have a better perspective of the lie of the land. So at the moment, in the short term, maybe as we progress, we might not have the full picture, but at some point down the line, we will get a much better understanding about the broader perspective. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Of all those pathways you could pick, that hopefully gave you some additional insights into what lies ahead for you and what to be noticing and paying attention to.
And it's interesting the way you played these cards out as well, because it makes me kind of feel like that it's a pathway that you'd make through these cards. And so do you sometimes do that? Do you ask people then to choose additional cards and to sort of enhance their story and build on it through those different pictures? Because I kind of want to pick almost like one from each column, so I'm going to work my way across.
I can't say that we've done that way on Deckhive before, but absolutely. What happens next in your story, Martin?
Well, I'm going to go up here now. I don't suppose you need to hear all of my story, but I think that's kind of interesting, isn't it, to kind of look at how you might kind of explore that. I'm just going to pick a path now. I'm not going to tell the story because I'm just kind of curious about what pictures I'm going to choose. And I'm curious about kind of I know you've shared a few different examples, but in this in any of the examples you talked about before, have you had any kind of moments where you just feel like you've somehow through this process just had a transformative effect on people? Have you kind of had feedback from people that made you feel like that was a really special experience for people in some way?
I think the conversation that I had the other morning with my friend who picked the two cards, like posed the question and picked the two cards. I mean, even just that simple 10-minute conversation I had with her, it was transformative for her. I mean, it really helped her in that moment understand how she was feeling and what was ahead of her. And I think just sometimes the simplest moments can be transformative, for sure.
So is that kind of a regular experience for you, that you kind of, whenever you're using these kind of techniques, it feels like you're helping someone just to get to a completely different place?
Yes. Yes, I would say yes.
It's a privilege, isn't it?
It is. It's such a privilege.
I really love seeing how a team can transform and see their commonalities where they might come in with seeing differences, and that really can transform a team by building trust. It allows them to do that exposing a little bit of vulnerability, to share something that to trust in the process a little bit, so it gets us off to the right start in facilitating them, but it allows them to trust each other through sharing a little bit of their stories and what they're seeing and what they're feeling. And that has lasting value. The teams that we worked with and individuals we've worked with for years and years and years. And I think a lot of it comes back to being able to bring their full authentic selves to the work, and pictures are a way of getting kind of below that shell, below that exterior mask maybe that people put on to be their full selves. And that's really, I think, ultimately what our work is about helping people to bring their whole selves to the work, and then whatever work it is that they're choosing to do that in a more powerful way. So transforming the work.
And I think one of my favorite things, I mean, it's an individual experience within a group process, has been when we used the pictures as part of an intention setting at the beginning of a team process, or in an organization. And I've had individuals come. I remember this one young woman who said, I've been on, you facilitated me like 3 or 4 times, and I keep trying to really push my intention out, and every time I pick a picture that I think is going to be more than what we can accomplish, and we always do. We always accomplish it. It's always, she was kind of sharing the story in terms of being frustrated that it was such a powerful experience for her to have picked a picture and thinking that it was going to really pull her, like it was not possible. This was not going to be possible. And at the end of the project, they had exceeded what she had thought was going to be possible. So I always kind of think about that in terms of the power of the picture to really help push ourselves even beyond what our limits, what we believe our limits are, which is very cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah. What do you have any thoughts or awareness of research around why that happens?
Oh my gosh, how much time do you have? No, I don't. I personally don't have any research. I have some thoughts about it, but I think sometimes we keep ourselves in little boxes, and I think the power of the pictures really help us open up and expand our possibilities for ourselves in a safe way. I mean, it's just a little picture, it's just a little picture.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's absolutely. But it kind of provides some kind of boundaries, I suppose, in a way, doesn't it? Because it's just one picture, and you can only see a bit of that place. It's not like being there in a real world where you can just look beyond that frame. So you've consciously or unconsciously, I guess, the picture has then framed the story that you tell in some way, and I guess that adds some focus too, in a way. No, it's fascinating stuff. So I'm sure there might be some questions. So if you do have questions for either Susannah or Lynette, then now's the time to have a think about what they will be. Feel free to add them into the chat or to unmute yourself in a second. But while you're thinking, just to provide a bit more context about Deckhive as a platform for those of you who don't know it already. So as you've seen, we have some fabulous card decks in digital form, and you can use them in lots of different ways when you work, whether you're working one-to-one or within groups, as we've seen here. And there's a growing library. So we've got a number of other decks. We've got 22 decks in total, I think, in the library at the moment, and there are a few others in the pipeline. And it's still very new. So we are continuing to add new features, and we'll continue to get feedback from people about what works well. So if you are using the platform and have any inspiration about what would just make the world a difference to you in the context that you're using it, then please let us know. We're always keen to hear. And from a practical point of view, in terms of a user, there are 3 plans that you can choose from. So we have a free plan, which unfortunately doesn't give you access to the Pathways deck, but it does give you access to some starter decks that will give you a sense of how the platform works. You can have a play with it, and we hope they're useful. But then if you're on either of our paid plans, the starter plan or the unlimited plan, then you get access to every deck that's in the library. So then you can give all of them a try and see which ones work best for you in the context that you're working and with the audience that you're working with. So we very much hope it's a useful tool now that so many of us are working in this kind of new way, whether it's wholly online or in some kind of virtual hybrid kind of way. So there we go. That's a bit about Deckhive. But any questions again about the Pathways deck and about the work that these guys do? Feel free to unmute or add to the chat if there's something you want to know. And while we're waiting for any other questions to pop in, I had one that occurred to me a minute ago, because Lynette, you were just talking about, I think, using the same deck repeatedly with the same group of people. Is that something that happens very often? And do people ever kind of say, oh no, I've done that now, I don't need to do it again?
I think there are so many different pictures that you can use it multiple times with a group or with an individual. You know, there's some comfort as well as there's a variety of different pictures too. I mean, we do have multiple decks when we're working live with people. We have multiple decks that we can pick from. So we do, I probably do tend to mix it up a little bit. But Susannah, ideas about that?
No, I mean, just for variety, I think we sometimes like to do different kinds of activities. We don't want people to get bored with it. But I think that what we find when using the same set of images over is that you go deeper. You go deeper and you build on the learning and the insight that you have around yourself and your teammates. So, and I think we have like 56 cards. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes, yeah. I'm glad. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, because there are a lot there, aren't there? And that's part of the power in itself. You know, you've got so many different choices. If you're looking at the pictures, and if you're choosing randomly, then I guess reduces the chance that you'll pick the same one twice if you're using them again. So we have a question from Ruth about: have you ever used the pictures with teenagers?
Yes, teenagers, children.
Yeah, and how does that compare?
You know, it depends on their development level, I guess, in terms of how deep they go. But I think using pictures with kids and with teenagers is really fun and allows them to express themselves in a way that I think it makes the conversation maybe easier. Particularly if you're using it with them. You know, it depends on what your setting is. Ruth, I'm not sure what setting you're using, but.
Yeah, I work with children with a stammer and teenagers with a stammer. And I'm just thinking that quite often we do kind of something on what do you value, you know, and how do we move towards your values kind of thing. And these might be quite useful for that.
Yeah, that would be really fun to see how that would work, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
And do you hear from other people who've used the deck in different ways and the ways you guys use them? Do you sometimes get that feedback? I know it's one of those kind of great unknowns sometimes, isn't it? You kind of see the decks kind of leave you and go around the world to far off places, and then you always wonder what happens to them. But do you get that feedback?
I feel like we just had some feedback, and I can't remember the details of it, but a woman who we work with, who's a huge fan of these. In fact, she kept sending people when we were still selling the physical decks, which we don't have the physical decks for sale anymore. Now we're exclusively online on these decks currently. But she kept sending them to all of her other, sending her other collaborators to buy these, and she's using them with a lot of leadership kind of training. So I think helping to define kind of leadership roles and really seeing the power in the pictures in the same way, that it gets people to share in ways that they might not otherwise. In particular, I think if you get a group of leaders, and I think she was working across maybe the banking industry, that they were able to then kind of, you have to appear smart. I'm with these other leaders or whatever. It gets them out of, it kind of equalizes that playing field. So much like with the teenagers, it can equalize the playing field. It can with people who are high level leaders as well. We've used picture decks with, and I think this deck with people who are community leaders, and they're definitely, politics and levels the playing field again and allows people to just come to some common ground.
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? And that's one of the things that's so lovely about creating a resource like this. It's so flexible and so many possibilities. And it's so then it isn't just about the constraints about your own ideas, is it? It becomes something of its own, and other people will turn it into something that can do wonderful things in the world that they work in and that they live in. And I think that's one of the great joys of creating card decks. So I can see that, yeah, you're clearly fans of card decks, and I imagine, Lynette, you're probably going to create loads of more, aren't you? I can see.
Yeah, I'm in the process of creating a new one right now.
There
was the one other thing that I would add that just came to mind as Susannah was talking is we do have people that use these decks for just their own personal journaling practice, for example, where they'll pick a card and then they'll journal to that card. They'll describe what's in the image of the card, what's around it, what's in front, what's, if they've turned around and looked behind them, what is going on behind them. And then from that sort of intuitive journaling, they can pull out some insights for themselves for the day. That is, we do have a tip sheet that you can download if you're interested in the deck, and that is one of the exercises or activities that we have.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, so that's accessible in Deckhive, isn't it? So it's one of it with a number of the decks that we have in the library. When you are a subscriber, you will see there is a section on the page about that deck that's about how to use it, and sometimes there are downloads, sometimes there are videos, and you can only access those resources once you're on one of the paid plans. So if you don't see it, that will be why. Well, thank you both. Was there anything else either of you wanted to say before we head off into the sunset, or the sunrise in your case?
Thank you. We're so happy to be part of Deckhive. I mean, it's just really an exciting platform to be part of. So thank you so much, Martin, for everything that you and your team are doing.
Well, thank you for putting your content on there. It would be a bit of a different tool if it didn't have any great card decks on it, wouldn't it? If it was just kind of an empty page. So no, we appreciate your content and all the work you've done over the years to create something that is so powerful and so flexible and useful for people. So yeah, it's good to collaborate with you.
And we do welcome any feedback and stories so that we can continue to share those. So I know our contact information is out there on Deckhive. Our website is experienceaha.com if people want to find us. I have had a couple of conversations with people from the Deckhive community that I wouldn't have known before. And so always happy to, I think we all can learn from each other. So we're really happy to engage in conversation, either by email, social media posts, those kinds of things. Let us know how we can think together and help you make the tool as powerful as it can be.
Brilliant. Excellent, thank you. Well, we'll include mention of those things on the information on the YouTube page with this video, the recording, and we'll send it out to the people who registered for the session for today as well. And we thank you very much, and look forward to hearing about the next journey of the creativities that you clearly have, and the practices you have to do some great work. So yeah, thanks again for your time, and we'll see you at the next webinar, hopefully.
Thank you. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.